All right, let's dive into the fascinating and honestly often hilarious world of cultural signals. We're going to try and decode some of these subtle and not so subtle differences between English and Slovak social customs.
So let me just start by asking you a question. Have you ever, say, bumped into a table and instinctively muttered, "Oh, sorry about that"? If the answer is yes, well, you might just have a little bit of the English spirit in you, which, funnily enough, brings us to our first exhibit.
And this quote, it just nails it. This isn't just some throwaway joke. It's a real cultural observation that points to a much, much deeper social code. So you know what? Let's break that code down.
We're going to put together a little user's guide to the English social character. And we have to start with that famous apology reflex, don't we?
You see, the English sorry is this amazing thing because it's not always about admitting you're at fault. Think of it more like a tool, a social lubricant. It's this verbal cushion that helps people move through the world without creating any friction. It's less, I deeply apologize, and more just, hey, I see you, we're sharing this space. And then we have the fine art of understanding. Seriously, it's an art form. While other cultures might reach for dramatic language during dramatic events, the English default is to dial it way, way down. A house fire becomes a bit of a nuisance. A national crisis, a spot of bother. It's all about this deep-seated desire to not make a fuss.
And of course, we have to talk about the weather. It might seem like the most boring small talk on the planet, but really, it's a genius social tool. Why? Because it's completely safe. It's neutral territory that lets any two strangers start a conversation without any risk of disagreement or, well, awkwardness. It is the ultimate icebreaker.
Now, all this focus on social order leads us directly to the sacred rite of queuing. I'm not kidding. The commitment to forming an orderly line is almost primal. And you have to understand, jumping the queue isn't just seen as rude. It is a minor social felony. It's a deep violation of the social contract.
And finally, the humor. The English love making themselves the butt of the joke. It's a way of showing they don't take themselves too seriously, which is a huge signal of comfort and relaxation. But here's the real trick. If they start gently making fun of you, that's not an insult. That is practically an invitation to be friends.
Okay, so that's one side of the coin. Now let's pivot. Let's bring a whole other culture into the picture, Slovakia, and see just how dramatically different these social codes can be. And really, the heart of the difference comes down to communication. English social language can often feel a bit indirect, kind of blurry around the edges. It requires some interpretation. The Slovak style, on the other hand, really prizes directness and sincerity.
And this contrast plays out in so many everyday situations. I mean, look at this. An English person might politely say, "Oh, I might join you later," just to avoid a direct refusal. A Slovak person values clarity, so they'll just say, "I am not coming." And this isn't about being rude, it's about being clear. The same goes for giving feedback. Polite grumbling to friends later versus honest critique to the person's face. Even the language itself, with the formal V in Slovak, creates these clear social boundaries that English just doesn't have in the same way.
Okay, so that's the theory. But what does this stuff actually look like out in the wild? Let's get practical. Let's start with where people socialize. In England, the pub is the go-to because it's neutral ground. You meet out. But in Slovakia, the home is central. Getting invited into someone's home is a really significant gesture of friendship and trust. And that is why hospitality, especially the food, plays such a huge, monumental role.
And hey, even the approach to drinking reflects this. In England, you have the session, a long, slow evening, pint after pint. In Slovakia, though, you're often welcomed with a stiff drink, a quick, strong shot of something like Borovicia, as a gesture of hospitality. One's a social marathon, the other is a welcoming sprint.
All right, now we're getting to the big one. The biggest source of potential crossed wires between these two cultures, what it actually means to be polite. This phrase, right here. We must have lunch sometime. It seems so harmless, right? So polite. But oh boy, can it be a conversational landmine.
So here's the breakdown. For the English person, this phrase is often just a friendly way to say goodbye. It's a conversation ender, a nice sentiment with no firm plan attached. But the Slovak person, they're very likely to hear a literal, genuine invitation. They'll be waiting for you to follow up and actually schedule that lunch. See? One person is being polite, the other is being sincere. And here's the key, neither of them is wrong.
So really, when you boil it all down, it's this.
English communication often has these hidden layers. You kind of have to read between the lines. Slovak communication, on the other hand, is built on sincerity. What you hear is what's meant. You always know exactly where you stand.
And that brings us to what I think is the most important takeaway from all of this. It's so easy to just fall back on simple stereotypes, but what's really going on here is something far more interesting.
It's not a question of one culture being blurry and the other blunt, or one being polite and the other rude. That's not it at all. They are simply operating on two completely different systems. They're speaking different social languages, where the rules of grammar for things like politeness and honesty and friendship, they're just written in their own unique ways.
And this kind of leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? Once you realize that these different social languages exist all around us, it really makes you wonder, what signals from your colleagues or your neighbors or even your friends might you be misreading, just because you're expecting them to play by your rulebook?